was here last week? Just show of hands. Who was here? I know my boy Stone was because he won a gift card. Last week we had motion night, and if you weren't here, yeah, I remember now. If you weren't here, man, the lobby was insane. It was insanity. Like, I don't think we could fit any more people than the people that were here. This was my count, okay, we had 320 students. Can we just thank God for that? Because, I mean, that is him working. I mean, that is his divine intervention for us to have that many students here. And so I'm just super, super pumped about that. That was super awesome. But I'm not going to lie, part of me missed this. It was a really good time, but a part of me missed this intimate setting that we have together as a youth group to come as a high school group, and for me to preach, and so I'm just glad for us to be back into the rhythm of everything. But I just want to encourage you with one thing, and I just want to thank you honestly, because you guys showed out last week and just brought tons and tons of friends, and I'm just so thankful that you did that. And for those of you that brought friends, thank you for catching the vision of the event. And I know that, several of you invited and, got some rejection. Don't worry, it's going to happen. But I just want to encourage you to don't have a motion night to invite friends. Always use this 2 hours that we have together as an opportunity to bring somebody who doesn't know Jesus. Okay, so I'm just super, super pumped about how you guys did that last week. But part of last week, and we kind of missed it in here, was we had a rebrand. Okay, if you look at the walls, Eastside YTH, that's not what it is. We're now Eastside Youth. That is our branding as a student ministry. There's no longer ESM, but Eastside Youth. And something that we're doing with that, and I'm really excited about this. Everyone knows the Blue Choopy that we have out there, the snack bar, and we love the Blue Choopy, but we just thought it was time to kind of make that area our own. And so we're going to do a little friendly competition, and how it's going to work is you can work individually or as a group, like as a marketing group, but really what you're going to be doing is the person that can come up with the name that me and Salas deems worthy of the new name for the Blue Choopy, your life group is going to win a huge pizza and ice cream party. Okay, and we might even do something special for the person that if you can prove it was their idea. Okay, no, not right now. All right, but over a few, I'm terrified of what you're going to say. I'm not going to lie. Okay, what? Okay. I mean, if you want to do a character with it, you can. You don't have to do a character, okay? It's just really, no more questions, all right? I hate questions. I'm not going to lie. But listen, I'm just messing with you, Anthony. What was your question? Okay, well, he doesn't have to be a character. It's just really, if you come up with the new name for the Blue Choopy, we will reward you. And this is high school only competition, all right? And so be thinking over the next few weeks what you want the Blue Choopy to be named. And I need you, though, everyone do me a favor and set that to the side, because some of you, I know you'll think about what you should name it for the next 25 minutes, but I really want you to get what we have for you tonight, okay? And then one more thing. On this Friday night, we do have a hangout. And if you were here at our last hangout, it was a blast. We played some 4 on the couch, some nines, we could kind of play a nice word. Scatterball, murder in the dark, only had a few casualties. That was supposed to be a joke. No one laughed. Cool. But listen, I really hope you be here Friday night. It's from 7 to 9. Okay, so be here for that, and we'll be texting you about that. We'll play some different games, and who knows? Maybe we'll play Fortnite or something. I don't know. It'll be a fun time. Okay, so hey, let's you should come. Okay, Fortnite tournament. There you go. All right. Now, when I sat down a couple months ago, after I had accepted the job to become your high school pastor, part of what I immediately did was I was like, all right, what are we going to talk about for the rest of the year? What are we as a youth group going to prioritize that we feel like this is what God wants us to look at in Scripture or to learn about? And I really did that. And if you don't know, I'm a complete sermon dork. Okay, I love sermons. I love writing sermons. I love studying how people preach. Okay, and I write my own sermon series. Like the stuff that we do up here is stuff that my crazy brain that God gave me, that He's done through me. And I sat down and there was just like a ringing in my ear about a particular topic that I felt like we should cover, and that was worship. And I got to acknowledge the moment that we just had of worship was extremely pure, and it was pretty awesome. And why that just encouraged me and why I'm looking forward to this series and why I feel like God was preparing the room for this series is I truly believe that this is one of the things as a Christian that you just need to absolutely get right. That you need to absolutely figure out what worship is, why we worship, what's the important part of worship, how do we worship, and I really want to invite you. It's only a 3-week series, but I want you to learn with me about what God has to say about worship. And so we got to figure out what is the reason that we worship. Like if we're gonna worship, and I mean, let's look at it this way: we meet together for 2 hours on Sunday nights, and a fourth of that is worship. So that's got to be a pretty big deal if like that's something that we're just super passionate about, and that's something that we do. A big chunk of what we do is worship. But for us to even talk about it, we got to understand why we worship and what it is. What is worship? And so what I want us to get is that if we can learn why we worship and how important it is, then I hope that part of what we look like as Eastside youth is people see us and, man, like they worship like crazy. They're passionate about worship. When people see us at CIY or on retreats, or if a guest comes into this building, they're like, man, obviously this is a huge part of what they do with this relationship with Jesus. And I want that to be part of our identity. And it's not as easy as it sometimes feels like, oh, worship is singing, right? That's what worship is. And I just want to tell you, I've been going to church my entire life. And I only a couple years ago really figured out what worship was and what it meant to worship God and what was important about it. Okay, so maybe something you hear tonight might be something that you haven't heard before. But kind of walk with me as we identify what worship is. Because there was a verse that I heard that just flipped my mind completely about worship was. And this verse is Romans 12:1, which says, "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship." And I got to say, this completely changed the ball game for me. Because my entire life, I thought worship was singing. Like that's what worship is. Like that's what we do as a youth group. Like when we come and Alex is playing the guitar and he's doing his thing and where he's leading us. I don't know what that was, but just go with it. Like that's what worship is. But looking at this verse, it feels like worship's more than that. And it kind of flipped my entire view of, okay, we have this thing that we consider to be so important, but this is clearly something bigger than just singing. It's living a life as a sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. That is true and proper worship. So what does that mean? What does it mean to live a life of worship? And I want you to understand this, that true worship is not singing. True worship is living a life for God. That's what true worship is. That the way you talk, the way you act, the way you view people, the way that you communicate the gospel, the way that you carry yourself, the way you handle conflict, the way you handle drama or peer pressure or the temptation of this world, that you living your life, that's what worship is. And notice, it doesn't say, okay, the way that you act at church is how you worship. Or the way you act at FCA or at a retreat. No, it's saying the way that you live, meaning all the time. I'm pretty sure, unless you're just like Jesus and you live and then you die and then you live again, you're living the way that you carry yourself, that's worship. That the true form is a life of sacrifice that is holy and pleasing to God. Now, stay with me on this, because you're like, well, then why are we doing a whole series on worship? Because I want you to get that singing is a part of worship, but not the entirety of worship. But it says in the Word of God that singing is part of worship. It talks about this in what I've kind of called as the Christian handbook, okay? Ephesians chapter 5. And if you go to our big service, I love it because our lead pastor, Dave Hastings, he always says Ephesians, and I don't think that's how it's pronounced, but I think it's cool that he's that confident in it, all right? He's always like Ephesians. That's what he says, all right? And so I'm not gonna fight him on it, all right? But the way I've been taught to say it is Ephesians. Ephesians chapter 5, I would consider the Christian handbook. That if you were to think, okay, how am I supposed to live as a Christian? You could just flip to Ephesians chapter 5, and it's going to basically tell you what you're supposed to do. And part of that, in verse 19, says, sing and make music from your heart to the Lord. Now, that's something that you're supposed to do. And a lot of people take this verse and they're like, okay, that's how you worship. That's singing, that's how. No, it's part of the handbook of how you follow God. Verse 1 of Ephesians chapter 5 says, follow God's example. And guess what? The same person that wrote Ephesians is the same person that wrote Romans, where he said, therefore, offer your bodies. The same dude saying, follow God's example. So if living a life following Jesus is worship, this is how you worship. Because this is how you follow God's example. And so it's in there, but it also has tons of other things that we're supposed to do and how we live. And we're not going to get into those tonight, but there's how you stay away from sin, how you communicate to people. There's different aspects of it, and a big part of it is worship. But here's something that kind of bothers me. And I mean, this honestly is kind of a sore spot for me, because I've argued with people on this before, and I've seen it. And I want you to just stay with me, okay? Don't see my heart in this. But something that just really frustrates me, and honestly kind of saddens me, is people who say, I don't like singing. Or like when we come in here and we do worship, that's not really for me. Like, it honestly kind of makes me uncomfortable. Like, I just rather not sing. It's just just not for me. And I'm worried that if you say that or you think that sometimes, you don't really know what you're saying. That you're just misguided on what worship is. Maybe you haven't been taught, and so you don't think it's that big of a deal for you to say, well, I don't want to sing. Because when you sing and when you give glory to God through verbal communication, through the songs that we sing, what you're doing is you're telling him, thank you. Thank you for what you've done in my life. Thank you for being who you are, for being who you say that you are. That you're thanking God. And we get this idea sometimes that we can do one or the other in terms of singing and living a life that's holy and pleasing for the Lord. Like we'll say, I don't really like singing, or I don't really like to worship, but I'm living a good life. I'm doing all the right things. Or we'll say, I'm falling short, but I do come in here and I worship. And what you got to understand is you can't think of living a life for God and thanking him as something that's separate. Because we see in Ephesians chapter 5 that it's all part of following God's example for us. So if you think like, okay, I can come in here and worship and I can attend church, but then do what I want for the other 6 days of the week, you're not worshiping God. And if you think, well, I'm a Christian, I follow God, I follow his example, but I just don't like singing, you're not worshiping God. You got to understand that these two things go together, that they're together. Think of it like how you would treat a partner if you were in a relationship. Okay, say you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend. If you just always do stuff for your significant other, but you never tell them, I appreciate you, or I love you, or I thank you, they're going to not really care about what you do because you're never expressing to them verbally that I appreciate you. Or if you think about like someone who maybe you say all the right things, but you never do anything, you're not going to be able to say that you're backing up what you're doing. It's the same thing with God. One of the most common phrases that I hear that I absolutely hate is actions speak louder than words. Okay, I hate that saying because you need to have actions and words. You can't just live and do a certain thing and then not say that you're or speak about that. And you can't just talk the talk but not walk the walk. You got to do that thing together. You have to live that stuff together. It's got to be a combination of the two. That's how you need to view it. It's kind of funny. I actually, we're talking about singing a lot. I'm going to tell myself, and I'm about to lose some credibility with some of you, but growing up, I didn't really want to be like, and this was only for a short phase, okay? So trust me, it was probably only for like a couple months. But for a short phase of my life, I didn't want to be like a basketball player when I grew up, or I didn't want to like do a certain sport or something that would be cool. I wanted to be Justin Bieber. That's who I wanted to be, okay? For two reasons. Listen to this. Parker, I need you to be quiet, okay? You're talking a lot. I wanted to be Justin Bieber for two reasons, and this is just me being really authentic. I wanted to be able to sing and be good at it, and I also wanted to get chicks. Because back then, bro, everybody loved Justin Bieber, okay? He was the man. Maybe you don't feel that now because he looks a lot different, but when he was that smooth skin, slicked hair, 16-year-old, everybody was like, oh my goodness, it's Justin Bieber, okay? But listen, I found out, I need you to get this. This is this big part of the message. I found out early on that that's not what I was supposed to do. That singing was not why I was on this earth. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm necessarily like a terrible singer. I'm a do one of those because I embarrassed myself. Now I'm going to push myself back up, okay? Like, I actually led some singing for the church that I grew up at, okay? And I wasn't necessarily great or anything, but, it was something that I could do, okay? But listen, I have several people tell me that their gift is not singing. That's not their gift. But what you don't understand is that if you don't sing to God, you're robbing him of his gift. That if you're saying, well, it's not my gift to sing, or I'm not a good singer, I don't really like to sing, you are robbing God of the gift that we can give him by giving him praise, by saying that you're worthy of being worshiped, by singing to him and thanking him for what he's done. You're saying that he doesn't deserve that. I want you to not just think of it as like, oh, we come in here and we sing because it's something we do, but take this time to thank him for what he's done. One of the songs that I absolutely love, that I give my man Alex a hard time because he loves Phil Wickham, but it's a Phil Wickham song, is This Is Our God. Okay? I love that song because the bridge goes, who pulled me out of that pit? He did. And if you've experienced God, if you know Jesus, you know there's been multiple moments in your life where he's pulled you out of that pit. That it feels like life sucks, but you can pinpoint moments where you thank God for being there for you. For taking you out of the dirt and sin and pulling you up. I love that song because of that message. A psalm that I think Phil stole the idea of this psalm to write that song. And that's not a bad thing to use the Bible to produce a song. It's just kind of my theory. And if you don't know what a psalm is, basically it's a poem that someone writes for God. In Psalm 30, verses 1 and 3 says this. Starting in verse 1. I want you to just listen to this for a second. If you struggle to concentrate when someone's just reading, just maybe close your eyes. And starting in verse 1, it says, I will exalt you, Lord. For you lifted me out of the depths and did not let my enemies gloat over me. Lord my God, I called you to help, and you healed me. You, Lord, brought me up from the realm of the dead. You spared me from going down in the pit. And I think David might have been talking about his pull me out of the pit moment. Of when God rescued him. A couple weeks ago, we sang a song, and the band can come back out. We sang a song called The Great I Am. And I made it kind of like a goofy comment about it, but it's true that the song The Great I Am, I just love it so much, first off. But really, when Jesus said, I am, he was referring to himself as God. And it's kind of funny because people say all the time, I am him. That's a common thing you say now. They stole that from Jesus. There's a moment in the Bible where he did this, where there are several people listening to him preach. And it was the first I am statement where he said, I am the bread of life. And what was significant about that is Jesus knew his audience. he knew that speaking to these people, they would know the Old Testament like the back of their hand. And the I am statement is a reference to when God revealed himself to Moses in the burning bush. And he said, I am. He used the term Yahweh. That's what the term I am means. And Jesus was saying, you know the same God that led the Israelites out of Egypt, that worked through Moses, that showed up in a burning bush? Yeah, that's who I am. And it's this beautiful picture of this word Yahweh. I mean, it was so sacred in Jewish culture that you didn't even say the word. The word meaning Lord, that you wouldn't even say it out loud because of how holy it was. And it's this beautiful picture of our God, the God that we serve. And He is the God that is above every other thing. That He is who He says He is. That He's Yahweh. That He's Lord. That no other sin or idol or false god, it can't even come close to Him. That in so much in our life, when we're faced with other people that like maybe they're gods themselves, or maybe it's something that they've started to do, or maybe it's another person, we know that we can worship the God who says exactly who He is, and He follows that up. We sang the song about how He's the great defender. And if you know Jesus, you know that that is so true. That our God is Yahweh. Don't lose sight of that. That we serve the only God that is worthy of praise. That should be something that we just are so bashful about. That I can't believe that my God is Yahweh. And so, I want us to take a moment to thank God for what He's done. To worship the God that is worthy of praise yesterday, today, and forever. So, if you would, I want to invite you to stand as we worship the God who will reign forever, Yahweh.